To have you with us. It's the Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, where you can get your YSRPs, them Yahoo Sports reward points, up to $30 upon depositing. Just use the link over at awesemo.com in the NFL tab. That's all you got to do. The showdown slate tonight under NFL. It's free, written by EMAC, our boy Eric McPherson. Click the Yahoo link straight at the top, and it'll send you on your way. YSRPs, the same thing as cash, baby. Play them on the site, win money on the site. Upon depositing, get off to a good start there. Get in the $200,000 NFL baller, get in the $25K NBA baller. Become a baller yourself. Apparently, that's Yahoo's new catchphrase. I dig it. Anyway, sign up using the link. Use the sign-up code AWESEMO. We'll see you over there. They are the sponsor of the Deeper Dive. I'm Dave Lockren. With me, as always, Adam Scher. What's happening, brother?
What's up, man? 9-game slate, biggest we've had in like a week.
Okay, solid input. Yeah. Let's go and jump into it. First, as I ask you, Av, before every game, general consensus, thoughts on this slate. Like you said, 9 games. Not a lot of value right now, though. A couple guys have been ruled out throughout the day since we did the strategy show, but still hopefully waiting on more.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting because like you have a couple guys ruled out that have given us some value, but also that have made the mid-range really, really strong. For example, like Kyrie being out, opening the door for Dinwiddie, Sabonis and Turner both being pretty underpriced with Brogdon out. So, and then you still have guys at the top with Giannis and Harden and Luka. So I think it's a slate where you're actually going to get different roster constructions, which should be nice after it felt like all week last week we just had entire teams being out and slates where no matter how many games there were going to be guys that were 50, 60% owned.
Let's jump right into it then. New York Knicks, Cleveland Cavaliers. I nailed this one today, baby. No injury designation, but said, hey, Kevin Love's going to be out. Meanwhile, I get hate from somebody on Twitter because I missed that somebody was out. So he has recommended that I follow a certain Twitter account and make sure that I stay abreast of everything, Adam. You can't miss anything these days.
I do that like probably 3 times a morning show too and have never gotten anything for it.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. But what are you going to do? You move on and you live life. But yeah, so let's just talk about this. Kevin Love is out. The reason I mentioned this is because yesterday it clearly looked worse than it was. He came to the free throw line. He went out for a second on a foul. Looked like it was a hard foul. Looked like he got hurt. Hurt his back. And then he came back in. Now, those things flare up overnight. No doctor, but we've seen it enough. So he's going to sit this game out. Now, the big question here, we'll start with the Cleveland Cavaliers, is when you look at not just Kevin Love being out, but also Larry Nance out with that thumb injury, what are you thinking about this front court now?
So I think that Tristan Thompson is a beneficiary just in terms of rebounding numbers. His numbers without Love this year actually haven't been as good, but last season he got a huge bump in rebounding numbers without Love on the floor. His per minute production went from 0.8 fantasy points per minute to a little over 1 fantasy point per minute. And then with Nance being out too, it should help to solidify his minutes. So I think that Thompson's a big beneficiary. And then I think Cedi Osman is going to be a big beneficiary because he's going to get a lot more run at the 4 without Love. And so not only should he get more minutes, but it should be more productive minutes, playing closer to the basket, getting more rebound opportunities. Worth pointing out that with and without Love on the floor last year, he basically had no bump in production. He averaged like 0.75 of a point per minute. So I think the biggest boost for him is just that he's probably going to play more minutes now, but he's really cheap. And so I think him and Thompson are the two that come out as the most obvious values for me.
So, outside of just that, here's what matters most. What are you projecting for front court minutes for the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Right. So I think that's really interesting, especially with some other sites I've looked at today. Josh and I were talking about it before the show. Ante Zizic is on some other sites that I looked at getting projected for, like upper teens, low 20s in minutes. All of last season, which is a season where Kevin Love missed plenty of time, he played 1 minute alongside Tristan Thompson. So I don't think that the only way you're projecting him for those kind of minutes is if you're also projecting Thompson to like get hurt or get in foul trouble or something. They basically need to equal 48 minutes. So I don't think Ante Zizic is a good play unless you have something weird happening to Tristan Thompson. I think that Cedi plays, in that 34 to 36 minute range. I expect a bump in minutes for Kevin Porter Jr. I think that Alfonso McKinney gets into the rotation and plays, 18, 20 minutes. So I think that, Porter in your huge field tournaments at basically minimum salary, if you have a little exposure to him, I think that's fine. I don't expect McKinney to play enough minutes to really matter.
Okay. Now with the rest of this team, we've got the two big injuries. Of course, Kevin Love big, and subsequently Nance being out is big because of Kevin Love being out. I mean, normally if Kevin Love was out and Nance was in, he'd probably be our top value across the board, right? Or at least one of them. Is there anything you're doing with the rest of this team not in the front court?
I think that Jordan Clarkson's a really, really interesting tournament play. His minutes obviously still have a pretty wide range because they potentially could go to any number of, Brandon Knight or McKinney or, a bunch of other guys. But with Love being out, that's not only does it open up more usage, but it opens up the need for someone to be able to actually score offensively other than Colin Sexton, basically. And even last year, Sexton wasn't as efficient without Love on the floor to space it. So I think that it opens the door potentially for more minutes for Clarkson because of them running more small ball lineups, but also for him to just have a bigger role because they need a scorer out there. So I don't expect him to be a natural guy that anyone really gets to because of Love being out. But I think that there's within his range of outcomes that he actually gets a pretty big boost here.
1,500 likes get you the NBA deep dive for free. Adam wrote it today. It's a wonderful article. And he said, I want to give this away for free with 1,500 likes. That was Adam's idea. So in case anything happens with the site, it was entirely his idea, not mine. No, I'm kidding. But 1,500 likes between the deeper dive and live before lock. And the deep dive will become free. It's an awesome article. We switch off every day. We've been writing this for years now, right?
Yeah, since we started working together.
Yeah, for a while. And I brought it over from another site. So it's been around as long as anything else in the industry. And Adam does an awesome job on it every day. So that'll get you the deep dive. It's a great piece, particularly for cash games, but really for everything. So 1,500 likes between both of them will get it for you. What about the New York Knicks side? Randall played only like 25 minutes last time out. I know that you have some interest in Mitchell Robinson, high upside, but volatile player. Let's again start with the front court with the Knicks.
So another change in the Knicks rotation, which is probably just going to be a pain until it stops. Taj Gibson still started at the 5 last game alongside Randall, and my assumption was that you were just going to get 12 or 14 minutes or something out of him, but he played 21 minutes. You basically got all of the center minutes going to either Gibson or Robinson, who played about 26 minutes. And so that kicked Bobby Portis over to the 4, which means Bobby Portis starts taking minutes away from Julius Randle. I'm not projecting Randle for 25 minutes again, but I have him at 30 minutes because I just can't really give him those 34 to 36 minutes with confidence anymore if they're actually going to make their forward rotation similar to their guard rotation, where you just have a bunch of guys taking minutes from everyone. So I think that Randall is still an okay play if you project him for around 30 minutes, but it takes a lot of the excess value off, especially on a slate where there are a lot of really good power forward options that I think you can be more confident in their minutes. It basically leaves the one guy that I'm most interested in, like you said, Mitchell Robinson. It's not the best rebounding spot for him against Tristan Thompson, but he is still affordable. He played 26 minutes last game. He's a really good producer on a per minute basis. The problem is just that you're still going to run into a lot of really good centers on this slate, Thompson being one of them at basically the same price point. So it's still nothing but a secondary option for me. He just looks better than anything else on the Knicks.
All right. Favorite options from this game?
Thompson, Chetty, Clarkson, and Robinson.
And would you say anyone's like a premier priority across the slate?
Thompson, and I hate using the word premier priority with Chetty because I hate rostering Chetty, but at his price, I think he's one of the better values.
Okay, and I just made premier priority up. You can call it whatever you want, and I'm not going to fault you for it. Let's talk about Toronto and Charlotte. So Toronto Raptors this morning were only 9-point favorites, which seems a bit unusual given how bad the Charlotte Hornets are. But of course, there are some injuries to this team. And now they're 8.5-point favorites, 214 total. Still one of the higher implied totals on the slate for the Raptors, 111.5. But we'll start it off with Siakam. Just a really strong season from him. Of course, you have Noah Ibaka, and we'll talk about Marc Gasol, who's been, I talked about it with Josh on the strategy show this morning, unbelievably bad from a volume standpoint, from an efficiency standpoint, shooting 32% from the field this year. He's shooting better from 3-point range than he is from the field, which is remarkable and not in a good way. But anyway, Pascal Siakam's been excellent. The question is, with a lot of similarly priced players, not just at his position, but everywhere, do we get to him? 31% usage on the season, 20% assist, 12% rebounding. Across the board, he's been very effective, and that's what's made him a high upside option all season long.
Yeah, and in the 4 games since Lowry and Ibaka went down, he's averaged 42.1 minutes per game, 29.2% usage rate.
In regulation?
Yeah. I don't think they've had an overtime game in that stretch.
Yeah, just curious because that would make a difference, but that's still nuts.
Yeah, he's at 42.1 and Van Vliet's I think at 40. Second on the team to Van Vliet with a 19.5% assist percentage. He's only averaged 1.05 DraftKings points per minute over those 4 games, but the number that really stood out was he has a 42.6% effective field goal percentage over those games. Last season, his effective field goal percentage was 59.1%. And even if you look without Lowry and Leonard on the floor, thinking, maybe he's just not going to be as efficient, he still had a 58.1% effective field goal percentage. So he's shooting the ball a ton. It's just not going in. But over a bigger sample, there's no reason to expect that it doesn't. And it's a really good spot for that to start happening here against Charlotte. The biggest issue with Siakam is what you alluded to. It's just that you have a bunch of really, really high upside options that are a little bit cheaper than Siakam, not only at his position, but at other positions. So I think he's a good play, but I wouldn't say he's like a number one, power forward option simply because of his price relative to some others.
Okay. And I'm with you. That's the problem that I have is when it comes to prioritizing him among a bunch of other guys, not just at his position, but at every position, especially where you have that flexibility on DraftKings, it gets a little bit more difficult. And we'll talk about some of them shortly. But with the rest of Toronto, I was going to say, do you agree with me that Marc Gasol has been terrible? But it's not even a conversation.
No, man, I think he's been great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know what game you're watching, Laffy.
Yeah, no, it's a good spot for him because Charlotte's front court sucks, but it's just really, really difficult. It's not like the sites, did what they're doing to Jokic and we're like, oh, well, we think Gasol's a 6K player, but because of how he's been playing, now he's 3,400. He's still basically within the range of prices where he would normally be anyway. And now you have, he's $100 less on DraftKings than Tristan Thompson. He's $100 more than Mitchell Robinson. He's not that much less than Miles Turner. It's just really tough for me to even be interested as far as, he could have a big game eventually standpoint, because sure, he could go out there and get like 35 or 40, but that's basically what I'm projecting Thompson and Turner for. So it's not really the slate where I want to go there.
By the way, just one more thing on Siakam. I don't know if it surprises you, but I was surprised to find that he was, top 4 in the league in points in the paint. I thought you'd see like more outside shooting from him, but he's pretty much doing everything. The only guys averaging more points in the paint, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Andre Drummond, and Montrezl Harrell this season. Pretty incredible. Again, Josh and I discussed this, but you've got a Charlotte team that's allowing more points in the paint than any team this season. It is a really, really good matchup. It's just how easy is it going to be to get to him? So I wanted to point that out. But yeah, I think all in all, if you get to someone like Siakam, you're going to like him. Also, I think the 6th most putback points allowed by the Hornets this season as well. Anything else for Toronto stand out to you? Interest in Fred VanVleet or any of these wings?
Yeah, I think Van Vliet's price tag is just still too cheap. It's pretty easy to get to him. And like I said, since Lowry went down, he's averaging about 40 minutes per game. He's averaged over a fantasy point per minute as well. So that's pretty appealing. It's, again, you have, like Spencer Dinwiddie for less. So I wouldn't say he's like the number 1 point guard, but he's definitely someone that I'm really confident in when I do get him in the lineups.
Okay. The Charlotte side of the ball, it gets dicey here. Devontae Graham's played really well. Even alongside Terry Rozier, you've seen positive production from him. Rozier's reasonably priced. Devontae Graham flirting with 7K, but he's not there yet. That's on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Graham's at 7,200. Rozier's coming in at 7,200 as well. And then over on Yahoo, you've got Devontae Graham at, come on now, don't fail me now, $26, and Rozier at 26 as well. So very similarly priced, identical on FanDuel and Yahoo. Graham a little bit more expensive on DraftKings. Are you tackling anything in this backcourt for the Hornets in a tough matchup with Toronto?
No, in the context of the slate, there's just nothing that really stands out here. The one pricing thing that I did notice is that on DraftKings, Miles Bridges is 4,300.
Yeah.
So is Nick Batum. Last game, Bridges played 14 minutes. Batum played 21. I'm not really doing a whole lot with either of them, though, because I think that so every minute Batum played, Bridges was not on the floor. If he's basically going to be Bridges' backup, then I would expect going forward more often than not, he's not playing a ton. Batum's not playing a ton of minutes because why would you be playing Batum over Bridges at this point? But also,
Batum played 29, Adam.
What did you say?
Batum played 29 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I said.
You said 21, I thought.
Oh, okay. I meant
maybe you did. Maybe I missed her. Either way, 29 minutes for Batum.
Yeah, 29 for him, 14 for Bridges. But going forward, like I wouldn't expect Batum to be playing more minutes than Bridges. I would expect that Batum being there maybe keeps Bridges closer to 30 than the 36 that we were seeing before. So it's just overall a situation where on this particular slate, I'm not really taking shots at it.
Are you taking shots at anything from Charlotte?
No.
Nothing. Okay.
Nope.
All right. Yeah. Stun of time, y'all says, I heard 21. I thought I was going crazy for a moment.
I think, did he play 29.1? Maybe I was I just in my head like transposed
it. 29.1. Yeah, you did.
Okay.
That makes sense. All right, fair enough. Let's talk about Brooklyn and Indiana. So big news here is, of course, Kyrie Irving is out. The big news on the other side, Josh, if you're listening, I wouldn't want to get this wrong. Malcolm Brogdon also ruled out.
Yo, Brogdon's out?
Yeah. Yo, can you sign up for some alerts or something? Get with it, guy.
My bad.
That's all right. Karis LeVert been out. TJ McConnell's out, which, is relevant because he's been playing 20 plus minutes every single night, Adam. Oladipo's out. Jeremy Lamb is out. Like there are a lot of guys on this Indy team that are injured. And then, of course, enough on Brooklyn. So let's go ahead and start with the Brooklyn Nets. You got a 214 total in this game. Nets are 2-point favorites with a 108 implied total, 106 for the Pacers. Spencer Dinwiddie, of course, is going to get a lot of opportunity here. You should see increased usage and minutes. What are your thoughts on Dinwiddie at $6,000 on DraftKings and reasonably priced pretty much everywhere? 5,800 on FanDuel is really friendly and 19 on Yahoo.
One of the best plays on the entire slate, regardless of position with Kyrie out. It's not a really appealing matchup against Indiana in terms of pace or Indiana's defensive ability, but at this price point, there's really no reason to be concerned about it. He played about 30 minutes last game, but he dealt with foul trouble. There's no real reason to only be projecting him for 30 minutes. Since last year, without any of LeVert, Russell, or Kyrie on the floor, he has a 31.4% usage rate and a 39.9% assist percentage. He's averaged 1.2 DraftKings points per minute over that stretch, and he's just very, very clearly not priced for that. So I don't really care that he's going to be popular. I'm going to roster a lot of Dinwiddie.
It's really hard not to, because you know what the big thing, and I think sometimes we overlook this with all sports. Dinwiddie's actually a really good basketball player, right? And, so often we see guys fill in for a point guard or at another position, and they just aren't very good. We're playing them for the minutes. I know he's not priced like a cellar dweller, but he's actually a really good player, Adam, and that stands out when you're talking about someone that's going to have like significantly elevated opportunities.
Right. If Kyrie had been in, I still would have been interested in Dinwiddie just because LeVert is out. So when you just add those extra minutes with Kyrie out, in addition to the extra offensive possessions, because obviously Kyrie's never going to be on the floor tonight, it's just a spot where also you want to keep in mind that it's basketball and not football or baseball. Like so many people's first thoughts are, oh, he's popular, where can I pivot to? There is a lot of good chalk in basketball where they're popular, they should be popular, and all you're doing is costing yourself money by going somewhere else.
Great point. Mark Wagner says, play good players. I know he's watched the Manny Laura show in the past. But yeah, it like you said, good chalk does not always need to be faded in basketball because opportunity is everything. In baseball, you know what? Mike Trout will probably see the same amount of plate appearances normally as Miggy Cabrera. Like they have the same opportunities. One of them is way better than the other, but they have the same opportunities. Spencer Dinwiddie is going to see a whole lot more opportunities than a lot of other players at his position, and he's really, really affordable, particularly on FanDuel and Yahoo.
Yeah, like if this were baseball, it would be like, oh, well, Spencer Dinwiddie's going to shoot 20 times, but 70% of the games he's going to miss all 20 shots. Like,
right.
You don't have that kind of volatility in basketball.
Right, absolutely. Talk to me about the rest of this one. I do want to jump to the front court with Jarrett Allen. We discussed it on the strategy show earlier, and if you're not watching the strategy show, you should be. Adam's on there a few times a week. I'm on with Josh a few times a week. Sal Vetri does one. It's 9:30 Eastern time every morning, Monday through. Do we do Saturday?
Emac and I do Saturday.
Oh, that's right.
At 9:30 a.m.
At 9:30 a.m. That's right. Yeah. So check that out. It's a lot of fun. It's a foundational look at every slate. So if you hear us reference, what we discussed in this morning's show, it's because, well, we did a show this morning and you should be watching. The Jarrett Allen, we talked about how, if he's chalk, this is where it gets a little dicey. Now, Jarrett Allen on a per minute basis hasn't been bad. He's on DraftKings right above a fantasy point per minute, right? Pretty much identical. But the big thing I have with him is even if he's not in foul trouble, DeAndre Jordan, his play, basically Allen oftentimes is contingent, his play and performance or play minutes are contingent upon what we see from DeAndre Jordan and vice versa. What are you thinking in terms of Jarrett Allen right now if he carries heavy ownership into this slate? I think it's down from where it was earlier. It was way higher earlier.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a huge priority for me, but I do think he's a quality value, especially because on FanDuel, he's a power forward, and on DraftKings, he has power forward eligibility. So the opportunity cost isn't quite as high as if you had the roster him at center. I have him projected for 28 minutes here. We've been seeing him, for the most part, get minutes when he's not in foul trouble. Last game, he didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. We saw DeAndre Jordan close that game out. But overall, I think they've still been siding towards giving Allen more minutes. So I think that at his price tag, he's a pretty decent value. But like if I had to pick one to have my night rest on, I would go to like a $4,100 Chatty over a $4,900 Allen.
Glenn Cat says Jordan stinks. Yeah, I mean, first of all, he's not terrible, but Jordan, from a per minute or a fantasy point standpoint, has actually been good this year. He's pretty good every year because he's a great rebounder and he can clean up around the rim. So whether you like him or not, there's always the chance that Jordan steals minutes off the bench. As a matter of fact, last game, Adam, and this is the only reason I mentioned it, last game we saw Jordan play 16 straight minutes to close out the game.
Yeah, that was the first game in a while where we had actually seen Jordan get minutes at the expense of Allen, where it wasn't just Allen, fouling out of the game or being in massive foul trouble.
Right. But there's always a chance. And
right.
What are you doing? Is there anything else in Brooklyn you like? If not, let's talk about the Pacers.
Not really, because I think this side of the game, Dinwiddie, I think, is one of the best plays on the slate, like I said, but it is the side of the game that's in a pace down spot. So, guys like Taurean Prince, who should see an uptick in usage, they still just kind of become deep secondary options because I just think that I would rather be going after some guys in other spots. Okay,
so like we had mentioned already, Malcolm Brogdon out, TJ McConnell out, Jeremy Lamb out. A lot of injuries here. Of course, Sabonis has been healthy. Miles Turner is healthy. We already got this lineup, I believe. What are your thoughts here on the backcourt? And let's just work our way from the backcourt all the way up through the front court and bang this Pacers team out.
So starting in the backcourt, you have Aaron Holiday, who should play monster minutes. Him and Justin Holiday both should play 36+ minutes, assuming a competitive game. Holiday's the better fantasy producer. Justin Holiday doesn't do a whole lot of anything. You still can, obviously make the argument that he's a decent value just because of the minutes and because of the pace up spot against the Nets. But Holiday does just a lot more when he's on the floor. He's especially appealing on FanDuel at only $4,100 compared to $5,500 on DraftKings. A decent value on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, I think one of the top values on the slate. So between the two, I would give preference to Aaron just because I think the minutes are comparable. I think he's going to have a higher usage rate. I think he has the ball in his hands more.
All right. Sabonis, Miles Turner. Miles Turner's not a good rebounder, but Sabonis definitely, even if he was, Sabonis has been rebounding at a ridiculous clip. He's got 13 plus rebounds in 13 plus in 7 straight games. He's hauling in everything available. He's top 3 in rebound chances in the league this year. Really incredible stuff what he's been doing, even at the 4. I know he's played some 5, but still, you got him starting alongside Turner. Interesting spot for Miles Turner. Not overpriced, but do you worry that he's the type of guy that can just fall flat so often because he isn't a great rebounder? He's a decent scorer. You know, he does block shots, but he doesn't pass. My question would be, is the price cheap enough for you to say, you know what, forget about all that. I like him enough to go Miles Turner here?
Yeah, the price is definitely cheap enough for me. The big thing for me, and I'd kind of forgotten it going into the last game when he came back from injury, he's been playing monster minutes this year. I kind of just naturally I'm like, okay, Miles Turner, 30 minutes. But he played 33 minutes without even closing in a blowout last game. He was playing 38, 40 minutes in a lot of games before his injuries. So I have no issue projecting him for like 36 minutes here. And, relative to other centers, he doesn't get a lot of rebounds, but relative to other players, he still does, obviously being, near the basket and still a good per minute fantasy producer, pace up spot, decent matchup against this front court. So I do still think he's cheap enough where he's a really good option. Sabonis obviously more expensive, but his price tag actually dropped a bunch on DraftKings down to 7,300. He's still 8,800 on FanDuel, which is fine. But power forward eligibility on both of those sites, which is really appealing. You mentioned, third in rebound chances per game this year, which is really nice. And without Brogdon or Oladipo on the floor since last season, 24.9% usage rate, 21.3% rebounding percentage, and just shy of a 20% assist percentage for Sabonis really just contributes in every category. So I think that Turner and Sabonis are both top plays regardless of position tonight.
All right. And if you mentioned it, my apologies, we'll move on. But did you talk about John and Musa?
No.
Do you think we should? I mean, do you think he might get 25, 26 minutes today?
I have him at 24.
Okay. So do you have him directly? Okay. Because we didn't talk about this. It's probably important. Do you think he is going to do you think he's going to just be at the 2? Playing the 2 with Karis LeVert out? You think Pinson's going to see all the backup point guard minutes? Is there anything other than Dinwiddie? I think it's important we cover this.
Not really. Musa picked up minutes with, I think it was Garrett Temple in foul trouble last game. He picked, I'm trying to quickly look at Popcorn Machine, but when I went through and mapped out the minutes, I know he played 29 last game, but I think that barring foul trouble to guys, he's more likely to play 24, 25. I just don't think that there's like enough usage for him in that amount of playing time.
Okay. Fair enough. Just because there isn't a ton of like deep value. So, we'll try and hit on these guys, at least let you know whether we like them or not. Houston and Portland, talking about value here. You've got Nasir Little and Daniel House. I mean, these are 2 of the guys right now, Adam, and this kind of shows you where we're at on this slate, right? Because Daniel House projected for 30+% ownership, Little up around 20%. Normally on a 9-game slate, we wouldn't feel like we were forced into discussing or playing these guys. A lot of times like you already mentioned, good chalk and bad chalk. I could make an argument that this is not the greatest chalk, particularly Little, but you've got a 230 total, the highest on the slate. Rockets with a 118.8 implied total, 111.3 for Portland. Before we get into the big names here, which we'll spend some time on, let's knock this the value plays out and just give me an idea of where you stand, because both of these guys are pretty low floor, low ceiling candidates.
Yeah, I'm not really that interested in either one for a couple of reasons. For one, with how much quality high upside mid range there is on this slate, I don't feel the need to necessarily be forcing myself into like Harden lineups and Giannis lineups when
that was the discussion we had this morning. Is it easier or smarter to just go with a very solid mid range and maybe get like a Doncic or something instead?
Right. Yeah, and we'll get to that. Doncic is actually averaging as many fantasy points per minute as Harden so far this year.
It's crazy.
So it's just like from a roster construction standpoint, I understand stars and scrubs always gives you a really high ceiling, but I think that on this particular slate, there's just so many guys that have monster ceilings that don't happen to be super expensive, that I don't necessarily need to go to someone like Nasir Little. He's averaged 0.6 DraftKings points per minute this year. I know he could play a lot, play 30 plus minutes. He also doesn't have to. So that's another reason that I'd be hesitant. He closed last game, but Bazemore, Simons, and Hazonia all did not close. There's going to be a lot of games where Simons closes over him or Bazemore closes over him. So it's not like it's a necessity that he be on the floor for that last stretch. And on top of that, this guy's averaging 0.6 points per minute, even though most of his minutes this year have not been alongside all of Lillard, McCollum, Whiteside. Playing with those guys doesn't increase your fantasy production. So the pace is like the pace and the potential minutes are the two things here that make him mildly appealing. But if he's going to get ownership, I think it's pretty easy for me to just, hope he doesn't go out there and score 35 fantasy points.
Yeah, I would think so too. By the way, you think Terry Stotts might be using Simons to close games when they're playing from behind?
I think it's a good chance. I mean, the game against San Antonio was a pretty competitive game, and they actually came back.
Right. But they still needed shooting.
Right. Yeah, but I don't know that it's necessarily as cut and dry as just when they're losing, but I do think that it's going to be inconsistent and based on game flow. Like